Recoil is one of those small details that completely transform how a shooter feels. And today, you and I are going to build it from scratch. In this video, you'll learn how to use an animation montage to add a clean and responsive recoil effect to your weapon in Unreal Engine. We will set up the montage trigger the right section from C++ and make sure the animation fires exactly when the shot happens. By the end, your weapon will feel sharper, more reactive, and way more fun to use in gameplay. This is the Game Creator Accelerator channel and I am Tony Munoz. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and ring the bell so you never miss the Unreal Engine tutorials, the C++ lessons, and the methodology and strategies that help you build a successful long-term career in the video game industry. All right here on this channel. This tutorial has value on its own to show you how to use animation montages, but it is also part of a playlist that details the process of creating a third-person shooter. My game is called Mad Game Verse, and you can get the entire code of this project from zero on this channel. Check the link in the description. Now let's get started. Let's present the current stage of the project. At this point, if I shoot, you just can see how I present the muzzle flash, but there is no recoil. It's just playing the same idle animation. And I want to change that. I want to add a recoil when shooting. To add an effect as a recoil when you are doing other animation, we use something called the animation montages or an animation montage. An animation montage is a special type of animation asset that lets you play very specific animations at the very specific moments in your game. Instead of running inside your regular animation blueprint state machine, montages let you override the flow and trigger short, isolated actions like attacks, reloads, finishing moves, in our case, shooting a weapon. Think of your state machine as the general brain that controls how your character walks, runs, jumps, and blends smoothly between motions. But sometimes you need a quick "do this now" command. That's where montages shine. They give you complete control to play an animation instantly no matter what your character is doing. Jump to sections inside the montage, perfect for modular actions like begin fire, loop fire, or end fire. Blend in and out smoothly so it doesn't look robotic or abrupt. Sync gameplay and animation, for example, firing bullets exactly when the recoil animation begins. In other words, the animation montages are your precision tool for moment-based actions. They let you inject quick animations without breaking the larger animation system. And for shooting mechanics, they are perfect. We can trigger the recoil exactly when the player presses the shooting button. We can fine-tune how strong it looks and feels, and we can keep the entire system clean and easy to expand later. Let's go to the folder of my character, inside the animations, and let's add an animation montage. Right-click, you can look for animation, and pick animation montage. You need to use the skeleton associated with your character. In my case, it's the Wraith skeleton. And let's name it Hip Fire Montage. Why Hip Fire Montage? Because I want to control the montage only from the hip up. I want the legs continue doing what they're doing. You'll see that now in a second. Open the montage, and here you can find several details. For example, in the asset details, you have the skeleton that you just selected. So this is the kind of things that you will start discovering as you work with montages. And you also have the mesh here to the right on the preview settings. Now I need an animation for the fire. As you remember, we have the animations of this character in Paragon Wraith. And let's go in the Heroes, Wraith, and Animations. We can filter this by animation sequence, and let's look for the word fire. Great, we have several animations. I'm going to inspect this Fire A Fast B1. Let's open it, and let's play the animation. Perfect. This is the sequence animation I want. It looks fantastic, just what I want. Go back to the content browser, and we're going to create a copy of this animation for our character. So drag this animation inside this animation folder and make a copy. Let's go to animations. Here we have it. And just as I did with other animations, I am going to name it differently to differentiate it from the previous one. And to differentiate, just at the end, add GV, which is gain version for me. You can put whatever you want. The next step is I need to trim this animation because it is too long. Let's open this copy. And you can see we have a lot of frames that I don't think I'm going to use. I just need the shooting. So let me go to the point of the animation where the recoil finish. This is the recoil, gets to around 9 or 10. Yeah, here is where it finishes. So I'm going to right click at this point and remove frames in range from 11 to 21 or 11 to the final frame. And now we have just the shooting. Look like that. Perfect. Save. Go back to map 1. Now let's open our animation montage. Double click. You can see in the animation montage that we don't have any animation, just the T-pose. On the right, on the asset browsers, let's filter by GV, which is the game version. And now I'm going to take the Fire Fast V1 GV that we just trimmed a moment ago and drag it inside the animation montage. Inside the time frame of the montage, you have this default, which refers to the default montage that we have at this point. But I want to create my own montage. To create it, move the mouse to one side, in the same line where the default is, right-click, and select New Montage Section. Let's name this one Begin Fire. But I want the Begin Fire to be the initial montage. So let's move the default to the right. And as soon as you move it to the right, the Begin Fire will be the first one. Now I can right-click the default and select the option of Delete Montage Section. The next step is adding a slot. But what is a slot in animation montages before we do it? When you start working with animation montages in Unreal, you will always see something that is called a slot. A slot is simply a channel. It tells Unreal where your montage should play inside the animation blueprint. Think of it like sending your animations to a specific stage. If that stage exists, Unreal knows exactly what part of the body should react. If that stage does not exist, nothing happens. Inside a montage, you can choose the slot. Maybe it's a full body, maybe it's an upper body, maybe it's one you created. That slot must also exist in your anim graph, usually inside a slot node or inside a layer blend per bone. But what is the magic behind the use of montages and a slot? Imagine that you have your character that can run with the locomotion system, but at the same time you can play a reload montage only for the arms. The legs keep running, nothing breaks, and everything blends together. The slot controls that blend. It decides how the montage interacts with your normal animations. That is why slots are essential. They let you stack actions on top of movement without losing control. Now, the next step is to add the slot. Besides the asset browsers and montage section, you have one that is called Anim Slot Manager. Click on it. Select Add Slot. And let's name this slot Weapon Fire. Now you have at the bottom your new slot. Back in your montage, you have this option that says Montage. Click on this arrow, select New Slot, and look for the slot you created a moment ago, Weapon Fire. Now you have two slots, one for the default slot and one for the Weapon Fire. What we can do with this one is remove it, so delete slot. But if we do this, as you can see, we lost the animation. So let's do something different. What we do is I'm going to remove this slot, delete it, and then I'm going to change the slot for the default slot. Select the slot, a slot name, and default group, Weapon Fire. And don't worry that you don't see the animation at this moment. Let's save the changes and open the animation blueprint on this button. Let's go up all the way to the anim graph, and here we're going to make some changes. First off, I'm going to remove this connection, and I'm going to drag a connection from the ground movement to something called cached pose. Pick the option that says New Saved Cached Pose, and let's call this one Cached Ground Movement. This is a new concept that we are introducing today, which is the cached. A saved cached pose is a way to store the result of a part of your anim graph so you can reuse it in multiple times without recalculating it. That's the entire idea. Unreal normally evaluates your animation graph from top to bottom. If you need the same animation branch 2 or 3 times, Unreal would have to compute it again and again. A cached pose saves that work. Why the cached pose exist? Well, to make the animation system faster, cleaner, and more efficient. Instead of calculating the same logic in 3 different places, you calculate it once, save it, and then pull it anywhere you need. In this case, the cache ground movement. In fact, because Unreal usually refers this to locomotion, I'm going to rename cache locomotion movement, and this one the same. Locomotion movement. Once I define the cache, then I can call it whenever I want. So right-click and look for cached locomotion motion movement. And drag a wire from this one and look for slot and pick the option that says slot or default slot. Remember that in the Fire montage, we have this default slot. Well, select this node and inside the slot name, pick the slot we created, which is the weapon fire. Now it changes here, weapon fire, and also here in the slot name. Finally, let's connect this to the output pose. Compile and save. Now that we have everything set in our animation and our animation graph, let's make the call in our code in C++. Let's open our project. And we'll pick the shooter character because this is when we call the shot. Before we continue, let me share something important with you. This channel is part of a bigger experience called the Game Creator Accelerator Lifetime Mentorship. The goal is simple, a real and measurable transformation into a game developer with the proof, strategies, and community you need to build a long-term career from there. You and I work together to build your first playable prototype in Unreal and to understand the core principles you will use in every future project. We also set up your social platforms so studios, publishers, headhunters, and players can actually see your work. Then we design daily routines and strategies that keep you inspired and progressing, even after your regular job hours. This is the same approach successful independent creators use to turn small projects into real opportunities, myself included. It helps you start shaping a business model around your game, while also positioning yourself for studio roles if that's the path you want to take. Because in today's industry, sending applications is not enough. Learning and creating in isolation is not enough. You hack the system by showing consistent progress, sharing what you create, and letting studios and players come to you. Inside the GCA, we have a clear methodology to help you do exactly that. And you're not doing this alone. You build your own brand, you join a focused community, and you have my direct support, including one-on-one sessions, week after week, with lifetime access to new strategies and reviews. If you want to know more, check the link in the description. Visit willum.com, read about the Game Creator Accelerator Lifetime Mentorship, and book a call with me. It will be a game-changer conversation. Let's go to the header. And at this point, you can see that there are some kind of not real errors in the code that are presented with these underlines. Sometimes these happen. In my case was because I moved my project from version 5.6 to 5.7. But let me show you how to solve this issue. Only keep in mind that this is not an error in your code. In fact, we can build and we'll see that there are no errors. This is an Intellisense error. That means that those red underlines are not real compile errors. To solve this issue, first close the Visual Studio. Look to the direction where your project is. Show in Explorer. Go a couple of levels until you are in the folder of your project. Select the Unreal project, right-click, show more options, and pick the option of Generate Visual Studio Project Files. Now let's open the solution on Visual Studio, and if we open the header and wait for some seconds, the Intellisense error will be removed automatically. This is important because you want to use the Intellisense to make the typing of your code easily. Now let's add here a class because we're going to use the Anim Montage, is going to call Anim Montage. This is the only forward declare we need at this point. Now I need to set the Anim Montage. So let's go to the button of the U properties, and we can add one here, where we're going to copy exactly this same one. Look, that is suggested by the Visual Studio. So I'm going to click Tab, and will be at the object. This is another suggestion from Visual Studio, which I think is pretty fantastic. I think is probably related with 5.7 as well. It's telling me you want to create an Anim Montage because we haven't created yet, and this is what I'm suggesting you. Again, pretty amazing. The only thing I'm going to change is the name. I want to call it Hip Fire Montage and save. Let's move to the implementation file. And to start, I'm going to include a new library. In this case will be animation/anim instance. That's it. Now let's save it. I like to save a lot, guys, so bear with me, please. And now let's go to the action of shooting, because this is where we want to work with this animation montage. The method that we have is shoot button press. After the code we have so far, we're going to add hours. At this point, though, if you want to understand how to handle the animation montage, you don't have to pay more attention to this. But if later you want to know how to create a sound or add a muzzle flash, you can check the previous lessons. The next line of code will be anim instance. We have a suggestion, which again I think is amazing, which comes with Unreal 5.7 and the work with Intellisense with Visual Studio. This is a suggested line I want. So I'm going to tap to accept. And in fact, I'm going to leave it like Anim instance. I'm going to get the mesh, and from the mesh, I'm going to get the animation instance. Just to refresh the concepts, remember that we have a shooter character that we set, which is this character, and we have several components. Among them, we have the mesh character. And the mesh character has an animation mode that uses a blueprint animation and inside an anim class. Inside that anim class, we use this animation instance. That's why we're getting the animation instance from the mesh that is associated with the shooter character, which we use in the blueprint of the character. Always get the connections. Understand what are the things that you are trying to get from the different actors in Unreal. Now I'm going to use this line of code I created as an if. I want to check if we can get this animation instance. And if I have it, then I can't do all the things. Here are some interesting suggestions for me. If hip fire montage, which is that I have a fire montage, then I can do this rest. At this moment, I'm going to tap, but I'm going to add some changes. The first thing I'm going to change is I'm going to add a static const fname. Oh, look at that. Beautiful, beautiful suggestion. And I will take it. The only thing is I'm going to change these names. I want the begin fire section name, and I can call it fname begin fire. And you may be asking yourself, where do you get this begin fire, Tony? In Unreal, if you remember in the hip fire montage, we create a slot that we named begin fire. And I want to reference this slot because this is the slot associated with the animation I want to play. Back in the code, now I can use this const and replace it in this first parameter. Why I did this and not leaving as it was a moment ago? Because by creating a static const, I create just one parameter that will live while the game is playing. I don't have to reference the fname begin fire every time. I have set this parameter, and because there's always going to be a player, I know that I'm always going to use it. I just have this space in memory set, and this access will be faster. It's a small change, but well, guys, we got to get used to make our code as efficient as possible. And talking about performance, I'm going to add one small change also, which is I'm going to add an if to check if the anim instance has the montage playing at that moment. if is playing. And hip fire montage. I remove this one. Perfect. If that's the case, then I'm going to play the montage. But if the montage is already playing, I can only jump to the section of the fire montage and play that animation from that point on. And yes, our previous code works perfectly, but these add a small element of efficiency. I can remove this line, save, and let's go back to Unreal. Compile. Perfect. Now let's open our blueprint and look for the montage parameter. Here it is. From the list, pick the hip fire montage. Compile and save. Finally, open the hip fire montage, go to the blend in section in asset details, and instead of blend time of 0.25, set it to 0 and save. Now let's test it. There you have it, a recoil. And if I shoot several times, it's looking fantastic. Don't worry about the position of the weapon at the beginning because it's moving, it's on the down position. That's something that we'll cover later on using other tools in Unreal. Alright, we have our recoil up and running. You learned how to set up an animation montage, trigger the right section from C++, and sync it with the exact moment the shot is fired so the weapon feels reactive and satisfying to use. Remember, this tutorial is one piece of a full Mad Gameverse playlist where we are building a complete third-person shooter using Unreal. You can study the entire process, reuse the code for your own projects, and adapt every system to your own game. You will find all the links and details in the description. And don't go without helping this channel grow and reach more creators. I need your help with the YouTube algorithm. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment telling me what you want to add next to your shooter, and ring the bell so you do not miss the upcoming episodes and all strategies we share here to build a real career in game development. Until next time, keep creating, keep sharing, and most importantly, keep dreaming big. I'll see you soon, my fellow creators.